Welcome to the latest instalment of All Things Movies. In this episode, we'll be exploring Greta Gerwig and her cinematic journey. Part of the Mumblecore School of Filmmaking, a term rejected by many who were placed under its wing by journalists who think labelling a style is the same as understanding it, her work focuses on the reality of day-to-day life and the troubles associated with it, rather than trying to pretend we're all only one shopping trip away from meeting a millionaire or a space cowboy who will save us from the mundane. Classed as a leading feminist visionary, it could be argued she simply writes from experience, and as a woman, that experience is from the perspective of a female. Something Hollywood has only recently woken up to existing. Her directorial debut, LADYBIRD, was warmly welcomed by critics and nominated for 2 Academy Awards, including Best Director and Best Original Screenplay. Not bad for a first attempt by any standards. LADYBIRD was released in 2017 and is a coming-of-age drama that places the characters and their relationships at both the forefront and heart of the story. Although the plot points are in no way biographical, the tensions, feelings and emotions of parental friction and confusion over the behaviour of friends and lovers are entirely authentic. Encouraging the actors to bring their own personalities into the piece, there is little deviation from the script, which emphasises a more natural way of conversing rather than a series of monologues and uninterrupted rambles. Rather than hide the problems of growing up as a young woman in modern society, she embraces them and forces the male audience to consider the world from a perspective they don't normally see, and allows the female audience to know they're not alone in the barriers they face. LADYBIRD fully embraces the idea of intersectional feminism, which acknowledges that discrimination has its own niches, and women will be treated differently depending on a multitude of factors. Class, race, and sexuality are just some of the extra hurdles women have to face on top of their gender. And each female's experience will be different, depending on these factors. Gerwig gives her characters a range of traits and identities to demonstrate this point, each trying to understand the individual frustrations they face, at the same time as dealing with the wider sense of social oppression. One of the great unexplored relationships in cinema is the one between mother and daughter, which was the original working title of the LADYBIRD script, a complex and emotional bond where the limitations of a patriarchy can just as easily be passed down to obey as rallied to push against. Gerwig forces the viewer to stop and question a society where we passively allow this to continue. 50% of the world's population cannot be held down forever, and Gerwig is at the forefront of breaking down that dam. Although work had already begun on the script for Little Women before the completion of LADYBIRD, it wasn't released until 2019 and was Gerwig's second solo directorial project. Louisa May Alcott's timeless classic remained set in its traditional era, but that didn't stop Gerwig breathing new life into the tale, incorporating a modern perspective. The ending is said to reflect what Gerwig perceived to be Alcott's original intentions, rather than the version that was released due to the pressures of society at the time, and includes a monologue reflecting the reality of life for women during that age that could only be written in hindsight. Gerwig's adaptation subverted traditional gender roles and challenged societal expectations, celebrating the ambitions of the March Sisters rather than questioning them purely for being the hopes of a female. She shows the contribution the female voice can have on society if allowed to speak. A simple idea that's as mystifying as it is abhorrent to discover isn't or hasn't been considered the norm. Ambition is not the sole domain of the male, and Gerwig questions why such a thought has been at the core of nearly all societies across the world. Perhaps the greatest transformation in Little Women was the character of Jo March. Her tomboyish ways from the original writing were translated into somebody who was a person first and a woman second, refusing to fit into the narrow constraints set by the world around her purely based on her gender. It was a refreshing take on a complex character that's often overlooked and misunderstood by a rigid society who fails to understand anybody who strays from the norm. Gerwig's latest project is the Barbie movie, due to be released during 2023. An icon of what a female was supposed to be back in the 1960s. Many argue she was the original caricature of womanhood, and helped teach younger girls that being pretty and having a good-looking boyfriend were the only ambitions you needed. Over time, the doll has been diversified, acknowledging the changing attitudes around her. It will be fascinating to see how Greta Gerwig handles the character, using her as a beacon of female empowerment and creating a worthy idol for a new generation who will hopefully continue to push for the right to be acknowledged as equals. If you've enjoyed our cultural meander, don't forget to subscribe and comment as we reveal more magic behind the movies.